great to see that we have a lot of participants today. And it also looks like our panelists are here as well. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and have the different panelists introduce themselves. Christelle, do you want to go first?
Sure. So my name is Christelle. I graduated in May, was class 5 of Bridge to Rwanda, and I'm currently back here in Rwanda and working at Dalberg. I'm happy to answer more questions, and thanks for having me on the panel.
Sure, thank you. Vanessa, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Giramata, and just graduated from Washington State University this May, and also starting working with Dalberg as an analyst right alongside Christelle. So I'm really excited for this time, and I look forward to all the great questions. And hopefully some people put on their videos and I can see them.
I really hope so. It was a little lonely when I logged in. Yes, Joyeuse. Joyeuse, are you there? Oh, there she is.
Yes, can you hear me? Hey everyone, my name is Joyeuse Senga and I'm a Group 5 Bridge to Rwanda scholar, and I also recently graduated in May with a Bachelor of Science in Health Science and Public Health, and I'm currently working as a research associate to the Vice Chancellor at the University of Global Health Equity. I'm excited to be here and to see some of the people that I haven't seen in a while.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself. Serge, would you please introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Serge. My apologies, I don't have my video on right now. I'm still setting up, but yeah, so I'm a British Rwanda scholar. I just graduated from Princeton in chemical engineering, in June. And yeah, I've been working as a program manager at Minimex. Thanks.
Thank you, Serge. And thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. It looks like we've got a number of you from each program. I see Gashora, I see UNL and British Rwanda Scholars, and maybe some other participants. So I'll get right into it. So we can start with you, Vanessa. Tell us about your experience transitioning from being an undergrad into the workforce.
You had to start with me, huh?
Take one for the team.
Well, okay. Ooh, what can I say about that? I think, as you all know, it's definitely like a very different time than what everybody was used to. So first class of Zoom 2020, let's go. It was just really different. But again, also being aware that it's not just different for me, that it's really like a global change that's happening. And so putting that into consideration, as you know that you have a lot of plans entering senior year or in senior year, and your plans just keep changing, that's just part of who we are. So I wouldn't say that the plans I had in December are the same plans that I had right now. And so I think the main thing that happened was the adjustment of plans to fit the situation, because just seeing that things weren't going to happen exactly as I thought they were going to happen, but also understanding that it doesn't mean that I'm going to change my goal or vision. It's just really like realigning to fit what's the new trajectory that I could take that best puts me back to the path of what I wanted to do. So I finished in May, and then I was interning with Dalberg actually right after, doing a remote internship from campus. So it wasn't very much of a difference of waking up and sitting on my laptop like I have homework and class, so, except it was an internship and it was more fun and in the field that I really enjoyed working in. So I would say it wasn't my transition honestly wasn't as painful, thanks to God, because I finished and then I started the internship. So I don't think I've had like a lot of, oh, like, you know, when you have time when you're not doing anything, that's when all the doubts, all the questions, all the worries just flood in. But if you are working on something, then it kind of helps to not be stressed. So I really thank God for the opportunity that I got to start the internship right after I finished, because then that helped me to, even when I'm navigating through job searches and everything, I had like at least that like peace of mind. I'm like, okay, you can only like worry about this much anyways. So really just trusting the process was mostly what was put to test. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's true, the fact that you had something right off the bat, that stress, the slump of what am I doing next, this new life, I'm not a student anymore, it's huge. And congratulations, by the way. Joyeuse, tell us about your experience entering this new stage in your life.
Yeah, I mean, Vanessa has already talked about it. I think just the uncertainty when schools decided to close in March and being a senior, even before thinking about what am I going to do after, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't get to wear my gown and walk on the stage. You know, all those things that you've kind of been like preparing for. I'm going to jump so high, I'm going to celebrate. And so that was kind of like a big shock for like the first week, being in disbelief that that's going to happen. But then again, as we transition to online classes, you really start to think of different ways to adjust to the situation. For me, being in healthcare, particularly and public health, uh, the pandemic was really like a big turnaround for me, because it was an opportunity to learn about how different healthcare institutions are tackling different problems, talking to people about their line of work and what they're doing in the COVID-19 response. So that was really like something that I benefited from. And in terms of the transition, I also had an internship that started in July. So I had about a month and a half where honestly I slept like 12 hours a day, no shame, watched Netflix all night. And it really felt great. It was a good break, not thinking about school, not thinking about, of course, yes, I was still job hunting and networking, but also just having that time to rest, read books, and do fun things. That was for me was kind of the highlight of that transition. And then, of course, going back to thinking about networking and also the job search. But enjoying that period of rest was really key.
Yeah, definitely. And we actually do need I think people don't get to do this often, that you need that break, you know, between you've been hustling for 4 years, graduation senior is not an easy year, and then right into job search and then a career. So it's a huge transition. So good for you for getting a break. Serge, can you tell us of your experience so far?
Um, yeah, so again, as I just mentioned, it was such a hell of my life when, in June I knew I was done with college, at least for the time being. And I was already here, so I moved back. I think it was around March when COVID really became a thing in the US at the time. And what I was thinking was I was at the time I was thinking of going into entrepreneurship, and I did try it, and I was working around how things were going, and but of course the pandemic was a little too big of a blow for us, and I had to eventually transition from that. But more or less, it was great, and I think I learned how things work when you cannot see your teammates every single day, you cannot see people you work with every day, and when things are rough, especially in startups, and you need that physical presence, and you can't get it, but of course you still know that there is so much out there than that, and it's been great, and from there just moving on and leveraging that experience that I had gotten in entrepreneurship and using that for to come up with new products for somebody else again, because that was financially feasible. Was great, and I think I can't imagine being here had it not been for everything that happened. And of course, just really happy that I was able to make that move like in March and seeing how things are going and just learning and, you know, never expecting what was going to happen yesterday. It actually turned out to be what happened tomorrow. And it was just, yeah, it's been great.
You make a really good point from the experience of not being able to see your coworkers, and hopefully that's a conversation we'll have a little later. And you guys are probably at the beginning of what's probably going to look like the new normal for years to come. So work might go virtual and remote for a while. So y'all are not volunteers, pioneers, I should say. And you made a good point about entrepreneurship, and hopefully you can tell us a little more about that experience later. Now I have a question for Christelle. What does it feel like being back in Rwanda? What does the transition of being home feel like? And what's it like not being a student anymore?
I would say the transition feels quite different because, you know, like the pace of life as a student, you have your assignments, you have your deadlines, you have commitments, classes you have to go to. So coming back and being in a job feels really different because then you're not necessarily hitting deadlines, but you still have to sort of try and grow out of your experiences and out of your job, still seek opportunities to like grow. So I feel like not being a student, I kind of miss that part where you have like specific ways you can measure growth, right? Not necessarily tests, but like things you learn. On the other hand, though, I guess not being a student also means you don't really have like assignments. You don't have the pressure of like, I guess also just being like having a stable job also is something that I'm very grateful for. So coming back and being able to also enjoy the company of friends and family, and of course Rwanda as well, feels different. It's a place that's familiar, a place that I kind of enjoy being at, and I've really enjoyed kind of coming back home and being able to sort of have that stability, that sense of familiarity with things and life in general. Yeah, I think that's what I can say about my transition back here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You actually touched on a very important point, the um, assignments and research papers and, you know, school. And now you're in work. I want to hear about your experiences transitioning, being home, not being a student anymore. And I hope the three of you can also touch on what's the difference between the school pace and now being in work mode. What's that like? Any of you, please. Unless you want me to keep calling on you. Serge, you're smiling. I think you can go next. Oh, Vanessa, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say just from the change from school right into the internship, I think one major thing was the weekend was a weekend. So I don't know. I hope it stays like that, but maybe people that are already like working can tell me. But the weekend really was a weekend versus like in school, you know, like you're like, oh, okay, I'll do this on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're literally pushing everything to Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I feel like when you're working, because results are like on the work as you're working. And so you could maybe have a Saturday really relaxed and just for yourself and for your family, for like social growth and not just like work. But also another thing I thought about is like, I think in school, okay, this is really bad. I hope nobody skips classes, but I feel like in school, sometimes you could, if you were really tired, I think you could like shut down for a day and not let it not be drastic. You know, you could really have a day off even when everybody's studying and just, you know, recuperate it the next day. And I feel like sometimes at work, you can't. You have to be at work. There's like things that are pending that you need to get done. So that is something that maybe you have limited ability to do in the workforce compared to school. But yeah, I think those were two that I wanted to point out. So Serge can take it off now. Thank you.
Yeah, Serge, please do, especially since you've been here for almost 6 months now. So you've had some time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the transition for me was was quite something, because I think at the time I was doing a startup when I was kind of more or less graduating. I started it, like, I think it was around November of last year. So it had been I had had the pleasure to have my co-founders around me for, I would say, for 5 months. So when I moved back and COVID was coming in and trying to identify how things were going to be, and all of a sudden, I think, we're working, and I'm working from home. And of course, that's how I finished school. But this room that I'm in right now I've spent more time in this room than I've probably spent in any other place for at least the last 4 or 5 years. So it was a, I mean, not an easy transition for me, because I do prefer being outside and meeting people and doing all those things, and all of a sudden just being taken away from school. And from I did engineering when I was in school, and from that we were always in labs and doing things and touching them and seeing others. But from that to a more remote work, and now having to have all the responsibilities of actually delivering falling on me, was something that I thought I was ready for, but I didn't realize how intense it was going to be. And 6 months on, and doesn't it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. And hopefully I keep being okay with it for as long as I can.
Thank you for sharing that. Joyeuse, you're working in the health industry, and you mentioned that actually it's different. There's a lot going on. What's it like so far, student-wise versus being in the workforce?
Yeah, I would say that being a student for me was different experience from going into the workforce, especially in research. So I'm a research associate, so that means part of my work every day is to read and write and think about different research projects, update myself on what's going on in the global health world. So having to know every day what's happening, that was kind of a very different experience, because at school I could time myself and say, I'm gonna do my assignment, I'm gonna go have lunch, then I'll hang out with friends. But then this time, especially working remotely, because I don't have to go to the office, I find myself working through lunch and then working until like 8 p.m., having to do some work at 10 p.m. So I would say in the research field, it's been a very big transition for me, and getting used to the fact that some people actually work late hours and even work on the weekends. So that was a big transition, and something that I'm really learning to do. But also something that has taught me is kind of self-discipline and setting those boundaries. So understanding that, yes, people do work overnight. Sometimes you'll receive emails at 1 a.m., but understanding that you also need sleep to function, and maybe not rushing to always reply the emails, and kind of setting those boundaries. I think that's been a big lesson as I transition, and talking to my team and saying, this is when I can be available, and this is when I need to maybe plan to have my lunch and stuff like that.
You make an excellent point, actually. I've heard from several people that they find themselves working more now with COVID. They're at home, so the work carries into the night, into the weekends, late nights. So that setting those boundaries is actually really good advice, and something that people are struggling with right now. And actually, this takes me into my next question. What has been your biggest learning curve now in the workforce? And in what ways has school prepared you or not prepared you for the workforce? I'd say Christelle. Can I go for it?
So I would say, so what has been I guess the hardest thing for me is realizing that sort of having to go from an academic or background to a more like business environment. So it's a lot of skills that you have to sort of kind of learn, it's not just like whether you can write well, or it's also whether you can communicate your ideas well enough for people to understand them. The complexity of problems that are in Rwanda, for instance, if you have a small business, are very different from the kind of problems you'll solve in class, because nobody's going to tell you how to solve the fact that there are people who can buy what you're selling because you're maybe selling at a higher price, right? So it's a lot of learning in that sense that I not necessarily. I don't think school has equipped me with the business knowledge to deal with those questions. But on the other hand, though, I feel like the kind of education that I was lucky to get also helped me understand that I can learn things and that I can be critical about the kind of approaches I take in my daily work. So doing research, talking to people, asking questions, asking for help, those are all things that I think I learned throughout my college experience and that have translated into my work, as well as just having, I guess, because school is always so busy, you have so many like assignments, you have to sort of managing your time and being able to prioritize things as well. Is something that I've learned from school that has been helpful, but I think I'm still sort of learning how to deal with complex situations, how to be engaged locally and not come with a mentality of, I know what I'm doing, because I've realized that I actually sort of have to start from scratch, understanding the local dynamics and being able to sort of learn from my peers at work and outside as well. Okay.
That's really good. Thank you. We'll touch on that later as well. I want to hear from the rest of you. What has been a stretch for a learning curve for you? Joyeuse, looks like you have something to share.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I would say the fact that there is no kind of like explicit result of failure and success. Because when you're in college, when you get an A, you're like, oh yeah, I'm good. When you're failing, you're like, oh shit, I need, to do something about this class. So you kind of have like the two comparisons to kind of mark where you're at and where you need to be. While in the workplace, it's really different. It's about the feedback that you get. It's about the things that you're learning. So that's just been for me a big learning curve, and understanding that sometimes when you're given feedback, it's not failure. It's more of a way to build upon the skills that you need to do what you're doing. So that I would say that's been just a big learning curve for me, being used to college where I'm like, if I get an A, I'm good, versus here someone can tell you, this was completely wrong, but this is how you do it. And kind of coming to terms with knowing that you can do work and it's not good work, but you'll get feedback and become better. Yeah.
I guess something that I would add, again, as I just mentioned, the hardest thing for me to learn has been how to kind of like get the most contribution for from those around me, more or less like my team and people that I work with. Because again, at school, I was in an engineering school, and let's say you're on a team, and if you're on a team, you're all in the same class and you do the same thing, you have the same experience, and more or less like, you're more or less the same, but you're kind of like multiplying whatever you can do. But what I found out, at least from what I do for Minimax, is that there are people who are better with writing reports, others are good communicators just in speaking, and others are great at other things. And just kind of more or less kind of like learning how to know what you're going to get from anybody that you work with has been the toughest thing for me, to be able to understand, hey, this person can do X but cannot do Y, and being able to really kind of get that and know that they need support with that, they need support with X, Y, Z as well. And just really kind of coming to terms with that, and kind of really just kind of going with it and knowing that it's not going to be the same as it used to be in school when everybody was exactly like me and had the same experience and had more or less the same understanding on things. And now we actually have to exchange and learn and, kind of just come from different backgrounds and so that we can create something for whoever is employing us at the moment was tough. But I think the fact that I was also like more or less exposed to a little bit of it was also like, wow, this is eye-opening, because I thought I was ready. I thought I was, like, how can it be? But I think that over the past couple of weeks, it's been great to just really get to stretch boundaries. What I think I know in terms of how to more or less combine things and create value, and I hope I can keep getting more of that as time comes.
As a follow-up to that question, actually, and this goes out to you, Vanessa, and actually any of you, having interned at the places that you work now, so you've interned there before, have you found that that made the transition easy, or do you think the place changed? What you did as an intern is very different from what you're doing as a full-time employee.
I think just from my perspective, of course, to some sort, it has to be easier because then now the person, like the people know you. It's almost like, when you get a job and then you have like the probation period, like the internship is kind of like that, just a little bit low key, so it's like they are trying you just to see what you can offer and what you can learn from this place. And I think something that's also important that I've realized, it's like, it's not just the company that is trying to see, oh, let's see how much benefit we can get from maybe Vanessa working for us. It's also like they have in consideration, would Vanessa really enjoy being in this place? Would she learn in this place? Would she grow in this place? Does this align with things she wants to do? So that's, I think maybe what sets apart like a really good company and an okay company. So it's not just the benefit of, oh, how do we, I guess, financially benefit from this versus do our people also grow from really the daily work that they are engaged in this workplace. So I think, first of all, the exposure, because when you're doing the internship, you're working with people that are employees of that company already. So there's that exposure that makes you see, okay, well, now I know Christelle works there. I know like all these people work there, and I can reach out to them and ask for advice. And so now there's that relationship being created, which will be like, it's good because now when you work with them, there's already like an established relationship already that you're trying to maintain and improve. So I think to a really big extent, it does help to do the internship there. And also another thing, there's what you think the company is doing versus what they're truly doing. So when we're researching the company, it's like, oh, I want to intern with this company. Like, you just read the vision of the company, what's on the internet, right? But it's not the nitty gritty of, oh, what time do they wake up? How do they manage global teams? Someone is in Tanzania and US. How do they do team hurdles? Like, am I sacrificing my sleep over that? Like, is this something that I really enjoy? Do the mission truly align with the work that they're doing? So all of those things you will not know if you're not working with them. So the internship is kind of like this, you get to see that what the company is doing, because it's not like they're tailoring an experience for you. They're doing their regular work and now you are just part of it. So I think you get to experience that and also decide for yourself if this is truly what you expected, if it's above what you expected or below what you expected. So then you know how to navigate moving forward. And so I think that like it allows you to see that and places you in a better place to also not only the company make a decision about you, but also you make a decision about the company if you both are like compatible and really like if this is the place you want to be. So yeah, I think that's at least for me what the internship has really helped me with. And I'd like to think, of course, the company would have not just sat and, oh, I think there's a girl called Vanessa, I think we should hire her. They wouldn't have just like came out of the blue with it. So having the internship has allowed them to see me, for me to be exposed to the environment and to contribute, and them to feel confident that, okay, this is a good investment we could make to bring her on board. So I'm really grateful for experiences of internships. But yeah, that's maybe because I'm really too biased about the company. I love it. So we'll hear from others.
Joyeuse, we interned together at UGHE. Do you think the experience has been different so far?
Yeah. So I would say it's been different, but also similar. So I interned with UGHE twice actually. And the first time I interned, it was in a different department. So I interned with the education department. That was the office of the vice chancellor, and that was more research related. And so just having, well, going to UGHE the first time and interning with them, I knew that it's a place that I wanted to come back to. But also having done the academic internship, I knew that I wanted to try something different. I mean, I loved what I did, but again, I couldn't see myself in that position working. And so coming back exposed me to a different kind of field of something that I could do. And so internships are really crucial because with UGHE, after my first internship, I was able to make those connections. I reached out to them again when I wanted to come back. So it was really easy to reach out to people because they already know you. And you just have to say, hey, I'm interested in this. Is there like something in your department that I can do? And so kind of having that exposure to network with people in that company. And so when I interned, during my second internship, I interned in the office of the vice chancellor. And it was very different. I would say it was very low key. But the good thing when I did the interview, they were like, you know, with the internship, you're at like a 5 times pace. With the job, you're going to be at like a 500 times pace. So it was kind of coming in into the space where they were willing to be honest with me because I knew the kind of environment that I wanted to work in. So they were very straight up about expectations of what I need to do. And also during my interview, I was very clear about what I want to get out of the job and what I want to get out of working with UGHE. So internships are really crucial in just building those honest relationships where you don't have to, as Vanessa said, have in mind what you see on the website, but having those honest conversations with people who work in those companies to truly understand the work that they do and if it aligns with your interest and what you want to do.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just remembered, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, and we definitely welcome questions for our panelists, please, in the meantime, put them in the chat box, and then I'll read them out loud. And in a few minutes, I'll get into the questions, so you can also unmute your microphones and ask the question. Now I'm going to go into finding the actual job. So with COVID and restrictions and travel and hiring freezes, what has your experience been finding a job? I'm just going to leave that, I'm going to leave it that broad. Christelle, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I would say, so it has been quite different for me because I applied to Dalberg actually in the fall semester of my senior year, so right before the pandemic started. So I can't really say if the pandemic would have changed the course of my application if I had applied later. But also I think what's the pandemic is sort of changing the nature of jobs and nature of I guess work in general. And so I can't really tell what it's going to be for other people, but I would say one thing that really helped me out was to kind of figure out, you know, what potential companies do I want to sort of target for my after I finish, and start very early, like mapping out deadlines and pretty much setting goals for like, I should be done with this application by the deadline, and I should make sure to talk to someone who works at the company, know what the company does, and sort of get informational interviews right ahead of time, so that you sort of have a broader, like a sense of direction when sort of March comes in, or like when you're about to graduate. But it also changes and varies with people's experiences. So sometimes you don't get a job in the fall and you get it in the spring. But I would say being proactive, asking around and asking people. I know the Bridge Career Services have helped people get jobs and are still continuing to help people get jobs. So really connecting early and being like, I'm interested in this, and where can I like sort of reach out, and how can I prepare myself, knowing what the job requires. Do they require the interview? Do they require case interviews? In that case, you will have to prepare ahead of time, so that when they call you for an interview, you're ready to sort of do the case, or if they have a problem that you have to solve. So it's all about just, I guess for me, it was that process really early on, September, October, November, but and right into January. But I think even when you start a bit later, it's still fine as long as you are proactive. Yeah. But as to the nature of the pandemic, I really don't know. I'm hopefully things get a little bit back to normal in the summer, but yeah.
Yes, actually, you do make a good point. If you're familiar, I'm speaking to most of you here, I guess. If you're familiar with the recruiting system in the US, people start going to campuses in the fall. I'm pretty sure that looks very different this year. So if there are any seniors, it's probably going to be different. Yes, so I want to hear about the rest of you. I know, Vanessa, you went from internship to job. Serge, you were here and tried up a couple things. What has your experience been, and what challenges have you faced, especially with the pandemic at the moment?
So I guess on my side of things, you know, I didn't think I was gonna need to go find a job. That was my hope. So at the time, you know, when the recruiting session came through in the fall and early in the spring, I wasn't, you know, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try a few things, but you know, by the end of the day, I'm gonna be starting a company. So how about can it be? So then what ended up happening was that, you know, I was here, and during that period, again, I could start seeing that, you know, the pandemic was getting really intense, and the economic impact was really impacting our sources of revenue, and how I was going to go about it, and it became a little too complex. And so at that time, that's when it became clear to me that if in any case, you know, just in case things don't go as, you know, as I'm planning, what else can I do? And through that, that's when I was like, you know what, I might as well just start interviewing for jobs and, you know, see how things work. So again, when that came about, of course, you know, just again, I had returned to Rwanda, like I think for all the summers when I was in the US. So again, from that, and also having, you know, been an intern at the Bridge, I knew that leveraging whatever kind of network I had built whenever I was here and during my time at the Bridge was going to be very important. So I started reaching out to those people that I knew, and of course, through the help that I was offered, and just trying to mention to people, hey, I'm here and I would want to chat. And through those, some of those conversations turned into eventual job offers. But, you know, had I known that I really, really needed a job like right away, I would have probably been a little more aggressive. And I think that's probably something that I would recommend a little more. And of course, you know, kind of a really keeping in touch with those people that you do meet and those that kind of pique your interest. And sometimes I met people, you know, from a company, but 2 or 3 years later, they were a different one. And they were so happy that I reached out to them, and they would give pointers and help me figure things out. And because again, at the time, like, you know, what we're going through with COVID, things are, you know, they are as tough as they can possibly get. And I think when that help comes in from somebody that you've known for some time and who's known you a little bit professionally, that was the difference maker for me. And I think that hadn't I had those connections, and hadn't I being able to return and actually meet those people and know the realities and get to know how they operate, I probably would still be looking for a job right now. So yeah, again, shout out to the bridge for making that happen, and for you know, allowing me to actually be able to meet these people and actually know how to approach them and lead those conversations and actually, you know, get the most out of them. And you know, I think the most important thing is, please do keep those, I mean, your address book, and, you know, really keep those emails, keep those phone numbers. They might not be as important to you today, but eventually you never know where you're going to meet somebody. And sometimes they become very helpful, and I hope they do for you as they did for me.
That's really good advice. And we actually have a question that is kind of a follow-up to this question from one of the team members in the bridge. So this is writing, he says, at the bridge, we like to hype up scholars to return to Rwanda. We obviously also provide substantial support. Given your experience looking for and finding a job in Rwanda, what would you tell students who are still abroad and undecided about returning home? Feel free to be unfiltered. Yes, this is a safe space. So yeah, tell us about the not fun stuff as well.
Hi. Oh, okay. I think so it's important to be realistic, okay? So every person has goals and things they want to do. And sometimes maybe what you are really interested in isn't as much available home as it is maybe where you are in the US, for example, right? So I know, like, the encourage, okay, you could be a startup, of that thing, but sometimes you have to be realistic. It's like, so what does it look like to be a starter of this, you know? And really, honestly, to yourself, it doesn't look feasible at the moment, you know? So you need maybe more experience for that kind of field you're interested in. And it's much more easier and much more the industry is more developed maybe here than it is back home in Rwanda. So you just decide to stay to gain that experience so you can grow in the things you're passionate about, you know, because at the end of the day, I don't feel like someone should adjust their passion just because they feel like they owe it to the country. Because trust me, if you're interested in contributing to the development of the country, you will find a way regardless, whether you're here or not. So I think sometimes really being realistic, okay, with what I want to do, is there opportunities already back home of what I could do? If not opportunities, are there windows of starting something home? And if those things are not available, then you could consider being here. Another realistic point of view is, let's face it, we like convenience, you know? So you're thinking, oh, why would I don't know, go struggle? There's so many people you can think already that are in Rwanda, they don't have a job. Why would you want to go and add on to that number when you could stay here and maybe do something that is not even completely related to what you want to do, but at least you have work, right? Especially in the time like a pandemic, where like maybe financial security is really like top priority over growing in your passion, you know, and which is not an unfair goal to have at the moment, you know, because so you could just choose to stay here for that aspect of, well, there's more job opportunities you could apply to, and just really move easily. That being said, you don't just also like discredit the country. Sometimes you just overall assume there are no jobs in Rwanda, but there are. We're here, and we are proof. So there are jobs in Rwanda, and I think maybe the mindset of, oh, but even if you have a job, I know people have told me that there's like, oh, but even if you get a job back home, it's not going to pay you as much as you have been paid when you're here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I won't be spending as much as I would have been spending here. So realistically, I wasn't expecting it to be equivalent, you know? So really also being realistic about your standard of living and how that we work together. And I think as a young generation, sometimes our goals are conflicting. You really want to be all patriotic and contribute to the development of the country, but you also really want to secure the bag and really be rich. So it's like, where do I find the balance in that? And what at the moment, what can I sacrifice, you know? And I think like the Bridge Career Services has been of tremendous help putting what is available out there, you know, so reaching out to see what's available and truly looking through without a judgmental perspective. It's like, oh, I'm sure this is not going to pay me well. Like, because if you're starting at that point, trust me, nothing is going to fit you anyways, because you're always going to be having like that mindset. It's like when you moved from back home to the US and you wanted to buy things at the store and you're converting it in Rwandan francs. Bro, you're not going to buy anything because everything is going to look super expensive. So don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. I think it's really possible to be just as successful and also contributing to the development here as back home. You just got to see where the two align, and if really being true to yourself and honest to yourself, is this an opportunity that is going to allow me to grow and that is allowing me to contribute and have impact, versus am I just really pursuing something maybe shallow in a sense? So I think it requires a lot of self-introspection in where you are at, and also how feasible it is. You know, maybe it's not financially feasible for you to be here at the moment, so you could stay here for a bit, and that's also understandable, because at the end of the day, if you're really passionate again to contribute, you'll find a way. So yeah, don't be pressured, and but also don't be judgmental and just think, oh, there are no jobs in Rwanda. There are definitely good jobs in Rwanda. So yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, we have about a few minutes to go. So we did have one quick question from Audrey. So she's one of, I can't find this question anymore. Audrey, did you delete this question? Okay, I lost the question. So, pardon?
I did not delete the question.
Oh, I can't. Okay, you can ask actually, since you're here.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. So my question was about if any of the panelists has adjusted to, like, say you had a major in the hard sciences like biology or physics, but now that you had to move to Rwanda and had to find a job and, like, you know, make an impact, you had to change to the soft sciences. If any of you has had that experience, how was the adjustment, and have you had any challenges in that? Thank you.
Someone want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can. I would not. I would not call doing business with soft science per se, but but again, the adjustment has been, you know, 90% of the classes I took were in math, in whatever, physics and engineering, whatever that was, and so by the end of the day, you know, I only took like one economics class, never took any accounting classes, never took any finance classes, nothing other than like one of the entrepreneurship classes in some way. So when the time came that I realized that, you know, like the market needs people who can, you know, kind of manage a project, you know, or be able to have the accounting and finances like in order, I had to take online courses to more or less kind of supplement what I had done when I was in school. And I think, was the adjustment very hard? Of course it was, and in so many ways. And of course, the same thing when you learn something in school, when you go use it for whatever you need, you're only using like 10 or 15% of it when you're lucky. And you've spent 10 or 15 hours, maybe even 20, and you're only using like on something you learn for only 20 minutes. And I think, I mean, at first I was like, why is this even worth it? But eventually, I think I became okay with the fact that it's a new skill. And of course, I think I'm only using, so little of it because I don't know it enough. And of course, from asking others and being, okay, hey, I don't know how accounting is done. Please teach me how it's done. Things have been getting easier. But I think, if you're probably thinking about it now, give it a try someday and see how it works. Because I think that I'm glad I did.
Thank you for sharing that. Looks like we're out of time, so I'm going to give our 4 panelists just a moment to share at least one piece of advice, something you should knew, or something that you wish the people joining us today should know before to prepare, whether they're sophomores or soon graduating. What advice do you want to pass down? Joyeuse, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go. I'd say one thing is to expose yourself and be open-minded. I mean, I'm in healthcare, so I was very set on like being in health sciences or public health, and like that's it. Don't tell me business. Don't tell me economics. Don't tell me, I don't know, physics. I think being just open-minded and having that flexibility to learn. You can take a class in economics or, I don't know, programming. So I think when I look back, I wish that I should have exposed myself more to the things that I'm not that are not in my line of interest. That way you get to network with people that are in different fields. Because at the end of the day, when you come into the workplace, you realize that everything is pulling from different fields. You're not just in research, not in bio or chemistry, you're pulling from everything. So just being open-minded and flexible and exposing yourself.
That's great advice and a mistake I've made. What about you? What about Christelle? What do you think?
I would say, yeah, I would highlight what Joyeuse just said, but also kind of add that a lot of the things that you experience throughout, I guess, your career journey and your college journey is meant to sort of teach you, like they tell you, oh, so you're going to teach you how to think and stuff like that. But I would say, don't be afraid to try and fail at things. I think failure is like one of the things that like sort of scare us, and the fear of not being good enough at stuff. But really, like, we're so young that I feel like if you try and fail and then try something else, like you can discover things you're good at. And like, even like, I don't know, I feel like there's a pressure to like right out of college, like get a job, have a 9 to 5, like just, I feel like there's also not an emphasis on like trying things, taking on a fellowship, like going to another country, learning a new language. Those are experiences that help you grow as a human being. And I feel like not necessarily putting yourself into boxes every single time. I feel like that's something that I feel like I wish I had done more. Like I went to college thinking, oh, engineering, like don't tell me about history, don't tell me about political science. Like, yet I feel like the people whose lives are enriched are enriched by experiences, the relationships you make with people. So I guess also on that note of relationship, finding mentors during your time in college, not necessarily like your direct peers, but people who you admire, whose work you think really has impact. Finding the time to have conversations about being like human, about the struggles that you're facing, about aspirations that you have, for me have been like very constructive, and I would encourage you to seek those out whenever you can. Yeah.
That's really good advice. Yeah, finding mentors and, you know, thinking outside the box, literally speaking. Thank you, Christelle. Vanessa, Serge, your 2 cents.
I think actually one thing that I wanted to maybe share is learn how to have a little bit grace for yourself. I think we're our harshest critics, and especially transitioning from academics to workforce, you can almost like feel like an imposter syndrome. You're like, am I really, like, now that it's here, am I going to be able to do it? You know, can really stress out about that, especially because in school, I think education is more just to open your mind to learning. It's not really like honed in. Maybe there's some things that are super specific, but for the most part, it's just about like opening your mind to learning. So in the workforce, trust me, okay, you might not learn from scratch, but you are kind of learning from scratch at work, you know? So you can feel that pressure of like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this. I don't think I fit in this place. Oh my God, they're gonna fire me. I'm not gonna keep up to the standard they thought or of who they thought I was. Cause you know, when you see that email of congratulations, you are like a great like person, and you're like, oh, okay. And then when you start the work, you like make some simple mistakes that you that maybe someone corrects you in like 2 seconds. They're like, oh, I've looked all day, I can't find this information. And then this person comes, she's like, type 2 things, the information is right there, and you're like, perfect. What am I doing, you know? So I think not being too harsh on yourself, like or discrediting everything you've done and everything, all the learning process you've gone through just because of, again, the failures and the hurdles that you encounter throughout the workforce, you know? So knowing that it's a very different realm, like from academics to the workforce, but the main key thing is like, if you're open to learning, you will get better at things, you know? And the reason why it's important to have some grace on yourself is the learning doesn't happen overnight, you know? So you don't get it wrong tonight and sleep in tomorrow, you're like a magician at it. No, it's maybe today you wrote 3 bullet points of something you could have written in 1 bullet point. Tomorrow you're gonna write 2 bullet points. So and progressively your sentences become most like just fine-tuned and concise over time, not the next day. So that's why it's important to have that grace upon yourself to really say, I am here. I think I can do this. I will, as long as you commit yourself to continuously learning and continuously trying to be the better version of yourself every day, not just at work too, in relationships, in balancing your life, in eating, in maintaining good health, in connections, in your family relationships, all of the aspects of life as you move from college to the workforce, is really important to have that grace to really, like, as long as you commit to being better tomorrow, better than you were yesterday, I think it's gonna be fine. But you need that. And so yeah, find that and really continuously remind you of that, even in the hardest of deadlines, rushes, relationships that are breaking and everything just going, girls in acne, boys in belly fat, I don't know, all the mess. Just have some grace to yourself to work over it. It will get better if you are persistent. So yeah, thank you.
We're getting really good advice. I'm taking some of this advice for myself, actually. Thank you, Vanessa. That was great. Last but not least, Serge.
It is very hard to follow what she just said. But yeah, so I think to take it like kind of one point further, I think, I mean, as much, I think it's really going to be important to know that, I mean, of course you have plans and you do things, but sometimes they change, and most of the times they will. But I think the reason I'm saying this is I think it was around November, actually probably October or something, that's when I was like, I I had like 3 places that I wanted to end up in. Trust me, I'm not in any of those 3 places. But the good thing that happened to me was, first I had no idea what management consulting really was, but then I ended up applying to Dalberg, and through that process, I learned about it. And, I ended up liking it so much that I really wanted to go to Dalberg. But then I got to the final round and I never made it. But the good thing that happened through that process was the day after that, that's when I started thinking about starting a business. So 2 days later, I had a new business plan, and that's what ended up happening. The business that I had, of course, that failed as well, and now I'm in another job. But I think the main reason why I'm sharing something that is, it is very personal for me, it is that I think really have the courage to know that you can start over and give yourself like a second chance on whatever you thought your goal was going to be, because by the end of the day you're always going to end up where you're supposed to end up. And I think those experiences do matter. I learned so much about consulting interviewing for Dalberg than I had ever known, and I learned so much about entrepreneurship that I didn't know until I started doing my venture for the 10 months that I did it. And I'm using both experiences in my next job. And without those two, I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm doing today. So more of the story is really just go at it, send those emails, reach out to those contacts, go to those interviews. Some more work, some others won't. But by the end of the day, those experiences are going to be very valuable. They've been for me. I hope they are for you as well. And please take them as steps, and give yourself a chance to try again. And I hope that you can take that to heart and do it whatever you choose to do with it.
Thank you so much for that advice, Serge. Yes, no experience should be wasted, really. I can't thank the 4 of you enough for making the time out of your busy day as people are working now to be with us, and for sharing very openly about your experiences thus far. And hopefully we can continue these conversations in the next couple of weeks and months to come. The people who joined us this evening, thank you very much. If you would like to have a recording of this Skype of this call, you know how to find us at the Bridge Career Services, or careers@bridgerwanda.org. So the same email that reached out to you for this call. To our panelists, thank you so much. We're rooting for you. And again, the Bridge is always here for you guys. Thank you, and thank you for staying for an extra 12 minutes this evening. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to connect with any of our panelists today, you can also email us at the same email. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.